name's Rod Quantock and welcome to Tough Crowd. Tough Crowd is an investigation into the issues of overpopulation. It's about how individual people think about it, deal with it, and most importantly, how they communicate their concerns to their friends and families and anybody else that's hanging around. So I hope you find it informative and useful, and please enjoy the interviews for Tough Crowd.
Well, this is a very, very special episode of Tough Crowd. It's a case of interviewing the interviewer, or the victor becoming the victim, as may be. So, welcome, Rod.
Oh, thanks very much, Mike.
So, Rod, you've been a comedian for 50 years.
Yes.
Which makes you at least 50 years old.
Yes, it does make me at least 50 years old.
Yes, I bring this up the passage of time because you must remember a time when it was possible to go up and down Punt and Hoddle Street without dying of whiplash.
No, absolutely. I remember when it was horses and carts. Yeah, so we go back to 1840 roughly in Melbourne. So whilst I haven't seen all of those years, I've seen 70 of those years in Melbourne, and you can't help noticing what population growth has done to the city. It's made it a lot less livable than our winning title suggests that we are. It's made people more unhealthy, more stressed. It's a curse. But the reason that we have all these people is because it's the capitalist economy. Our growth is dependent on more and more people.
But as a comedian, if Melbourne's population doubles in 35 years, that's twice as many people coming to see your shows.
I always used to think that, but no, it turns out to be half as many people as you get on. I find the issue of population to be really quite central, but as I said, I think it's more to the fact the number of people who are consuming pointless, useless rubbish, and yet we see that as the source of joy and happiness.
So for anyone watching this saying, well, why can't we just all not consume? You know, it's not a population issue, it's a consumption issue. Are you saying that it's both?
It is, because there are so many more people consuming. But then advertising and behavioural science have come into this, and we're not masters of our destinies anymore.
Coca-Cola is now.
Yeah, they play on our fears and our desires and our hidden impulses, and they do it extremely well. Nobody's looking at an alternative to that. I remember one American senator saying that we can go on consuming the way we're consuming for 7 billion years. And I thought that's very optimistic. He must have known something we didn't know.
Liz Allen and others from the ABC tell us we can just innovate. We just haven't quite found the right innovation yet. And if we just wave that magic wand of innovation, and if they build the infrastructure, our life will be saved. So why can't we just do that?
It's just that there isn't enough to innovate with. And if you take into account climate change, I mean, people say, well, look, we'll get rid of fossil fuels by all jumping in an electric car. But the carbon footprint of building an electric car is enormous. The metals that are in the batteries are causing wars in the Congo, and you know, everything about this lifestyle that we lead is corrupted and corrupting. So, no, the answer is to absolutely strip back the way we live. Every bit of research in the world says what people find most important is family and friends. They don't find most important the latest iPad or God knows what else they're doing. You know, I remember as a kid my neighbours who were childless, I didn't realise at the time, but clearly couldn't have had children, otherwise they would have, but they had a musical toilet roll holder. So when you pulled on the paper it played music. And I thought, that's really taking life to an extreme you don't need it to go to. And now you can get toilet seats that recognise you when you sit on them, and it will change the mood lighting in the toilet for you, and it will raise the heat of the toilet seat to your preferred level, and
well,
it will
that's
also...
one way to have social affirmation.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
If you're lacking friends and family at the time.
My toilet loves me. Yeah. So it's just weird. I mean, it's just, it's an unquestioned paradigm, and it's... and I don't know where you begin the questioning, because particularly, and you know, particularly around population, it becomes, it's a really strange thing, but you're accused of being a racist because you don't want more immigrants.
And have you ever been accused of that personally?
No, I haven't, but as I don't have a voice in the media. My particular interest is climate change, but more broadly the limits to growth. And I can't get anybody to talk about it. I can't get anything published. And so it's a discussion that you just can't have, because it eats at the very foundation of the way we live, and it threatens the wealthiest and most powerful people on the planet. And the money they spend to make sure we don't make changes is extraordinary.
And do you have any advice? I mean, obviously, when you have the opportunity, you talk about ending growth and post-growth societies. How do you broach that to people, and how do you make that palatable?
I don't get the chance to talk to people who don't share my views, and that's one of the problems of my life. But, you know, I was handing out how to vote cards for the Save the Planet Party.
Who have an excellent population policy, by the way.
They have the best population policy, yeah. So, and I just one woman in the queue, I said, look, you know, it's Save Population only party with a comprehensive solution to climate change, and it's the only planet we've got. And she just said, it's not happening. I said, well, you know, there are forest fires in Queensland at the moment that are unprecedented. She said, I'm from Queensland, my family's been on the land for 80 years, we've seen all this before, it's not a problem, blah, 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 blah.
Every year, though?
No, not every year. No, but...
Firestorms every year?
It's a conversation that's hard to have, and you can't, none of these things, you can't do this in a door knock of 5 minutes with somebody. You actually have to sit people down and go through a very thorough discussion of the consequences.
And of course, you know, talking so deeply about the environment is not without its consequences. I was just wondering, did you want to talk about some of the challenges of introducing big topics?
It's not only big topics, it's if you do challenge it's a cliche, I suppose, but the powers that be, you do pay a price. And so I've lost a lot of work, and I am very conscious that there are roadblocks to everybody who wants to go down that path of raising these issues and talking about them. You know, the children's climate rally the other day has just turned into a hate fest in the Murdoch press. Just abuse those children brutally. So it takes, and you get trolled, and you get death threats, and you get all sorts of things. So this is the challenge for me. The people who do think about it don't really know what's going on, and how close we are to a complete and utter collapse of everything that we understand the world to be. That's where I get a bit of pushback, because I'm very apocalyptic.
And this is a lighthearted series, so how do we make the end of the world and everyone's imminent death funny?
Well, I do that as best I can on stage. So there isn't a solution. That's the terrible thing. I've looked everywhere for a solution, and that idea that innovation will be the saving of us isn't the answer, and wind farms aren't the answer. The amount of materials that goes into one wind turbine is just extraordinary.
And of course the solar and the wind power only operates and runs the things that are made, and I think that's under 20% of emissions, and the other 80+% are to make the things in the first place.
Yes, and what was it, in 4 years, China used as much concrete as the US used in the entire 20th century. And they did it in a year, and concrete's the second, or cement is the second most polluting material that we have on the planet.
And of course in Melbourne we can't build enough of those up to
No, I just saw down the street from here somebody's built enormous. Oh, it's mad. It's all mad. So, you know, my solution in the end was just to eat people. Solves the food problem and the population problem, and lots of protein.
How do you make eating people funny?
Oh, I think it's the method you use to cook them. You've got to work out a different recipe for everybody.
Maybe you could bring out a recipe book.
I was thinking of that, the people we should eat first. I can stand back from it now and find it very amusing that we are so arrogant and that our hubris is so overwhelming, and our expectations that we are the smartest people with all the solutions is really just an intellectual vanity, which I find very funny.
Speaking of intellectual and vain, I've made a decision not to have children due to environmental reasons.
Yeah.
As someone who enjoys the company of children, have I made the right decision?
Absolutely.
Oh,
No,
good.
I just can't. No, when I first worked out that this was going to happen, I actually couldn't look at children. I just found it too distressing. Children have always been a statement of your hope that the world will be a better place. That, you know, you bring a child into it, and at the very least, it won't be worse than your world. This is the first generation, I just learnt the other day, that in the last 100 years or so will not be economically better off than their parents. And I used to think it would be a problem for perhaps grandchildren, but it's definitely a problem for the current generation of children. In the year I was born, there were 2.5 billion people, and it took 200,000 years to get 2.5 billion people. And we've added more than 5 billion people in my lifetime. So we've doubled the population, tripled the population of the Earth in my lifetime.
And one of the difficulties in human psychology is understanding the laws of exponential growth.
Yes, I'm really happy that there are those children, because as I move into my dotage and depend on the welfare state to support me, I need those children paying taxes, them down the mines and up the trees, earning a living and paying taxes. So yeah, good on you young people. And the system now promotes idiots. I mean, there are so many idiots in Parliament, and they look, they're just idiots. You can't depend on them to make the changes that are necessary, which means you leave a democratic population with nowhere to go. So the only level of government I see addressing any of this is local government, and they're basically picking up the pieces of failed federal and state government policies. But you know, Darebin Council here in Melbourne has declared a climate emergency. They understand it, local government understands it. I speak to local government groups quite a lot, and they do understand it. What I despair of is investing another $5 billion in a road or rail line. If that money was spent on
reforestation or foreign aid, family planning,
water security for people, food. I've always said that you'll know we've got it right when the MCG is a veggie patch. And,
if only.
Yeah, well, no, I like football. Don't you start me on football? It's one of the great achievements of humanity, football. But no, we need to really think about living locally, and that's hard in a city of 5+ million people. It's really hard. We're so disconnected, the west to the east and the north to the south. We don't understand one another. We're fearful of one another. We've lost a great deal of our capacity to cooperate selflessly. I mean, you know, Australians are decent people, but there's just this festering blight of right-wing politics and Murdoch. Murdoch's the first person I'd eat. But yeah, anyway, so...
anyway, we'll leave that.
But yeah, look, in the end, the conversations are really important, and they need to be had, and you just have to keep talking about it. You know, it's I can't sort of turn around and run away from it. It would be nice in a way to think that you could just leave it all behind and go and live in some little utopian commune or something, but no, those aren't the answers either. So, yeah.
So any parting words for us at Sustainable Population Australia? Should we keep yabbering on? And
Oh no, absolutely keep yabbering on, and be prepared to take your gloves off and punch a few people along the way, because they'll punch you, as you probably know. And I think you have to just be...
with an exponential growing number of people that will punch back.
Yeah, you've got to be... you have to be aggressive about it. Look, the terrible thing about it is that the people who promote the system that's killing us get paid extremely well to promote that system. You know, people like Andrew Bolt would be multi-millionaires by now.
And he didn't finance this series. We had to...
He could, absolutely. Volunteerism is really important. Building networks in community is really important. So where I live, there is a community which grew up around Jeff Kennett, when people got really pissed off at his planning policies and so on. And the East-West Link here in Melbourne created an extraordinary community of people.
That is very true, yeah.
And once you jab people with the needle of protest, most people continue on. They'll find some other causes to rally round and fight for.
Now, all these people protesting, is that just because they don't have a job? Because
No,
I've got 2 jobs and I protest.
Yeah,
So
no, that's all right.
I wonder why the right wing are obsessed with this lack of work.
No, people protest because they're resentful of the system. So all I say to people is just to get up off your arse and go and do something. Just find a group that you believe in and go and support them. There's lots of things you can do. Used to be you get a job licking stamps, but now you can't do that because they're self-adhesive. But you can do something to help the system, so get in there and do what you can.
Well, thank you so much.
That's a pleasure.